The existence of the de-influencing trend is evidence that people feel like influencing is lying. If you go down to the woods today, you are very likely to find an elder influencer in an anti-fascist hat she knitted herself and a whole load of opinions that you didn't ask for. That's okay. I'm assuming as you're here that you're curious about them at least, even if you don't agree. So hi, my name's Lena. I have been making videos on the internet and sharing them for 17 years, which is concerning because I have been going around telling people it's been 13 years for at least 4 years. Wait, actually that would make total sense. That's just maths. Anyway, it's been a really freaking long time, and I often have fictional conversations with my younger self about what I would have told her or what I would tell somebody if they came and asked me for advice now. And I thought, oh, bloody hell. It's a little bit more muddy in this forest than I was expecting. Like, I nearly died from that. What an embarrassing way to die. I'm not afraid of death, but I'll tell you what I am afraid of. Pointless, embarrassing death. I want to die heroically. I don't want to die in that. And that's the storyteller of me, ladies and gentlemen. If you're going to die, make it a good narrative arc. Anyway, the first thing I would say to you is you don't have to tell anyone and nobody needs to watch. And you might say, Lena, isn't that the freaking point? And I'd say, well, in my day, that actually wasn't the freaking point. I started uploading in 2009.
I tag anyone who's watching this to make a video response or comment in the comments below. Obviously, comment in the comments.
When literally nobody was making money on YouTube. YouTube wasn't owned by Google, and it was like a weird hobby. I think like basically the YouTubers that have been around longest on this platform are inherently the weirdest ones. And that's because it was a weird thing to do. So weird, in fact, that I didn't tell most people in my life, even the people that I freaking lived with. It took them about 7 months to work out what I was doing. And I found out because I came home one day from a long shift at the bar, and I came into the house and they were blasting my videos through the stereo system. Anyway, I was making videos on here for like 11, 12 years just for fun, like as a hobby. And it's only in the last 5 years that it's become my job, which I'm really, really genuinely still a little bit surprised by, a little bit suspicious of. I'm side-eyeing that, but so far it seems to be working. But I just freaking love this. I love this medium. I love the ideas that I find on here. I like sharing my own. I like being challenged, corrected almost sometimes. And of course I like finding fellow people who think the same as I do. It took me 3 years to get to 600 subscribers, and that's only because this other girl called Jess shouted me out, and I just remember the moment. I remember the rush. It was honestly creating for creating's sake, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the challenge of planning a video, thinking about where I was going to shoot it, how I was going to present the idea visually, because I think what is sometimes hard to grasp for the people who are just starting out doing this is that it is something you have to practice, and it's kind of a little bit like stand-up in that you can't just practice on your own in a room. Like, you kind of do have to upload it and show people, and the fewer people are there at the very beginning, the better. I actually think that the reason I'm so comfortable online at the moment is because I did upload almost weekly for 3 or 4 years with like maybe 1 or 2 comments on a video at best. Because essentially what I got to do was practice vulnerability, practice sharing stuff, practice seeing what did better or worse, and not being perceived by hundreds of thousands of people. So I feel like if you do want to start doing this, the aim is not to be watched. Really, it's just to practice all the skill sets that you need to do this. I can handle a certain amount of criticism at a large scale because I ramped that up slowly. I have been a slowly boiled frog. Not because I uploaded my first video and it went viral. That would have been awful. I would have quit, and I probably wouldn't have made any money because going viral, just so you know, isn't really that lucrative. So yeah, I think at the beginning, knowing what you're aiming for is really good, and those two things might come with views and might come with people watching, with people in your life knowing about it, but it doesn't have to, and they're the things that you can't completely control. So I would definitely treat those as a byproduct of your goals, not as actually what you want out of making videos or content on the internet. Which leads me on to point number 2. There are loads of advantages to uploading to the internet. take advantage of them. I had a lot of jobs before this one, and some of them I don't think I would have been hired for if it wasn't for this job. And that's not because they hired me because I had a lot of followers, because if I had that many followers I would have been doing it myself as my job and I wouldn't have been interviewing for their job. But more that I just got better at presenting, being able to present my ideas in public, being able to relate to people, being able to organise my thoughts. This job is endlessly humbling, and it's a constant invitation to reckon with yourself, your focus, your opinions, and yes, even your face. No one can tell me anything about this face that I don't already know. I have been staring at this face for a very long time. But not only have I just been staring at it like somebody might stare in a mirror and be like, oh, what's wrong with my face? But I've been staring at my face while it's been doing a job. It's been doing something I do believe in. It's been saying things. It's been delivering information and opinions, and having to see your own appearance in that context of like what its actual function is, which is to communicate, would make you feel like maybe you never want to get Botox, because this is a powerful political tool, my friends, and I shan't be surrendering it. Number 3, people are not a renewable resource. We often I've been encouraged to treat loads of things in this world as renewable, and spoiler alert, most of them aren't, but particularly people's opinions. I am going to go with Darcy on this one. My good opinion once lost is lost forever. That's what most of the general public feel, okay? Most of the general public are Mr. Darcy. So don't fuck around with them. Obviously you're gonna make mistakes, but there are the kind of mistakes that you can't see coming and you genuinely didn't know about. And there are the kind of mistakes that you're like, yeah, that was a bit I kind of knew. I shouldn't have worked with that brand. I shouldn't have said that thing. And I do think that working with brands that ultimately are like quite obviously evil, not the ones that are like secretly evil you might not know about, become evil later in life, but the ones that we know about, come on, is going to genuinely, if you are in it for the money, it's going to lose you money in the long term. And if you're in it for something a little bit more fun than money, it can lose you your ability to do what you came here to do in the first place, which presumably was to meet strangers and have fun. So protecting that at all costs has made my life a lot happier and a lot easier. And even if it hasn't gained me loads of bulk bits of money, I think it has gained me long-term stability, which is, I think, much better. Which brings me on to number 4. You should have another job. I think this is the worst first job to have ever. It will confuse you. It will give you a weird sense of what's actually broken about your job and what's just broken about the world and everybody's jobs. It's not the kind of job to have. If you want to learn about working with others, you should probably do that elsewhere and then come to this platform. It's not the job where you want to learn from scratch how to take criticism. It's much better to learn how to do that in a workplace first. And also, I think the reason I understand why this job is so cool is because I've had those other jobs, and I can separate what is just having a job and what is traits that are genuinely specific to my job. For example, God save me from the creators that complain about this being a relentless task with no holidays, or when they take a holiday, when they come back there's more work, because unfortunately most of the time that's just work. Actually, not in my bar jobs, not in my food service or retail jobs. They're actually the jobs that sometimes you can leave them and somebody else does the job while you're on holiday. But all the other jobs, they're 52 weeks a year. And if you want to take time off, you have to do more work before you go, or you have to make a strategy that means that you can genuinely have time off. I've personally never been in a workplace where somebody else organises that for me. And yeah, it can lead to burnout, and that's important. And I think exposure burnout, I think, is something that's particularly part of this job and something that is hard to deal with. But the burnout of just relentlessly working without being able to moderate yourself, you can't escape that by getting a normal job. But yeah, I think also another advantage of having normal jobs first, whatever a normal job is that at the end of the day, that's who your audience is. Everybody who's going to be watching your videos probably has a freaking normal job. So if you don't even know what that's like, if you've never actually done that, like the people who become influencers as teenagers, you're already one step ahead in market research, my friends. Audience knowledge is part of making any kind of content, or, for want of a better word, art. And it's such an easy bit of research to do because most people need to have normal jobs. I'm well aware that I may have to go and get a normal job again. And I would be sad, but I'd have had my time. I'd have been happy. And honestly, I do see a future as me as a walking tour guide. I think that'd be really cool. Anyway, not the point. I love this job. Please don't fire me. Okay, here's something that past Lena wrote in her notes app. And she sounds very knowledgeable. Let me read you what she said, and let's see if we can decipher what she actually means. Define your own relationship with the word influencer, but don't ignore it. de-influencing means telling the truth, then influencing means lying. Oh, if de-influencing means telling the truth, then influencing means lying. It's a marketing term, but it's also a reality. You're in a unique position where you get to design the values of your job. That is insane. Don't pretend you don't have it. Oh, shots fired past Lena. But yeah, I think I kind of agree. I mean, I wouldn't have put it like that. Calm down. But like, the existence of the de-influencing trend, if you want to call it that, universe, is evidence that people feel like influencing is lying. I didn't set out to be an influencer. The influencer term is actually a term that originated with companies who wanted to employ creators to sell their products. It's not really a term that anyone who's actually doing it invented, but it is one that a lot of people have taken on, and I occasionally use it in the right context. For example, if I am working with a brand, which is incredibly rarely because I hate most of them, even some of the ones I freaking worked with, fuck you wild, links on that below. But when I do work with them, I am an influencer because that's the job that I have that day. It's not my whole job, but that's the aspect of my job they have employed me for. Does that make sense? So I think you have to work out your relationship to that word influencer and what else you are, because you can't just be that. If you do want to use the word influencer for what you do, you should have a influencing too. Like, what are you influencing? What's your message? What's the plan? But if you don't want to use that term for yourself, what are you? That can change. Mine keeps changing. Literally every year I try and write down what my job is and it's different all the time, but you have to have some kind of other idea of the kinds of things you make in the genre and what the message is and what the point is. I had like retail and cafe and bar jobs up until the age of like when I left uni. I worked for uni, and then when I was 22 I got my first office job, and then I quit my last office job when I was 30. So I had 8 years of office experience, and some workplaces were great, some weren't so great, but the main problem I realised was me, and that's because I always came up against who I was making money for, like who I was working for, who I was adding value to, and it was never good enough for me, apparently, in my brain. Or it always worried me, it always set me back, it always made me resentful of working overtime or giving them my best ideas, because I didn't think I always knew that I was giving my energy to something that wasn't quite there, you know what I mean? This job allows me to get as close to working within my values as possible. This is the closest you will ever get. So to get in this position and then go and work with Amazon, that's a weird choice, my friends. Devil's advocate Lena here to say, I'm aware that this video is on YouTube, which is owned by Google, and Google is by no means a perfect company. So in lieu of there being a perfect place for me to host these videos, it must be here. However, I'm not unaware that that's far from ideal. Of all the job privileges, this is the one you get where you don't necessarily have to shill for evil people like 99% of the earth right now. And if you have the opportunity to not do that, not only it would be like hashtag a good thing to do, oh, such a spiritual, awakened, altruistic person. Not only is it kind of that, but also gross, it's also just incredibly relaxing. I don't think you understand how spiritually relaxed I am in this job. Even with the weird stranger danger and the petty comments on the videos, I see you, and the boring paperwork and some of the very small tiny violin downsides of this job. I think there are different categories of stress, and not actively working to lining somebody's pockets who is literally planning my demise, that's the kind of wellness spa that no HR department could ever provide me with. But you don't have to have the same belief system or criteria as me, but please work out what they are, because being able to even direct yourself towards them, even if you can't stick to them all the time, is so freaking lucky. Which leads on nicely to my final point, which is be your own HR department and be the best HR department you've ever had. Either think, if you've ever had a job where you've had a nice HR department, think about them. Or, I just had an idea, what if you Googled which country in the world has the best workers' rights, see what workers' rights they have, and see if you can try and give yourself the same workers' rights as the people in the best country at the moment. It's a stretch goal, potentially, for some of us, but it's something. I'm literally going to go home and Google that in a little bit. Minus AI, I'll work it out on my own. But yeah, be nice to yourself. Give yourself holidays and sick pay. And you can do that with like very simple financial planning. And for God's sake, don't get paid into your personal account, you idiots. You're running a business now, so unfortunately, all the money that you get from all of your different income sources, that's not yours. that's something else, and you work out how much you can pay yourself from that. But don't you dare get paid into your personal account, you silly little geese. You need to pay the tax man, okay? But you also need to pay yourself holiday pay and sick pay. So you need to make sure you've got a float for that, okay? A paid invoice, where you do a job and then somebody pays you for it, is not the same as a paycheck. A paycheck is something that comes monthly and has a strategy behind it. A paid invoice is just a lump sum for a job you did. As part of that HR experience, I also suggest that you celebrate your own milestones. I was lucky enough to get a 100K plaque from YouTube when I hit 100K. They don't do that anymore, and they don't do 200K ones, so I didn't get one of those when I got them. But I try and celebrate my own milestones, even if I don't get a plaque. So however small those things are, make sure you're celebrating yourself. You're always employee of the month, apart from Craig edits my videos and he is actually always employee of the month. Although obviously I am admittedly quite biased. I hope that if you never want to be a freaking influencer or a YouTuber or an Instagrammer or a Substacker or a Snapchatter or a Be Real. Is anybody making a full-time income off Be Real? I want to speak to you. Even if you don't want to do any of those things, I know that you consume the content of people who do. So I hope that was a good insight for those of you nosy about other people's jobs. This is a hat I made from a pattern I bought from an amazing yarn shop in Minneapolis who are raising money to help people affected by ice. So if you want to do that, even if you're not a knitter and you just want to buy the pattern just to support them, I'll leave the links below. But if you've been not listening to anything I've been saying because you've been admiring my rather fabulous hat, that's where you can get that. This video, if it wasn't already painfully obvious, was made possible by the Gumption Club. Can you imagine who would sponsor this video? They are one of the brilliant reasons that this can be my job and I can spend my time trying to work out what videos might be helpful for you to watch and making them. So thank you so much to them. If you want to be part of that community, we have an amazing time on Discord, and I also do podcasts exclusively for them, so you want to hear hours of me ranting about whatever. There's currently about 153 episodes up of me just ranting about stuff, so have at it if you enjoy that, and I will speak to you soon. Frogsnog out.